This is not a sentiment, this is a belief in the reliability of a process, and that is this, that whenever we encounter a problem like this, and I think digital identity is a beautiful example of it, I find that we are in a situation where I at least lack a lot of evidence. That is to say, we know that humans, especially, imagine this, we're all in the hands of teenage boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we want a process that's going to provide the benefits of self-sovereignty and digital identity without some of the pitfalls, if you will, that we know are very common to some of our compatriots around the world. And I would like to be able, I think there's a fabulous opportunity for more research, for more clarity about the kinds of governance that needs to be in place for that. I don't know how much libertarianism we're all up for, or how much would actually be anathema to our cause. But before we start giving people sovereignty, or having them realize their innate sovereignty digitally, let's find out what kind of tools we can give them to make sure that people make wise choices. It's like any other sovereignty. It's the right to come of age, to do everything from enter a contract, to be in intimate personal relationships, to vote. Some of us do really good jobs there, and some of us make a complete hash of it. When it comes to the digital world and digital sovereignty, let's make sure we know what those pitfalls are. I mean, more science and more evidence. And two, let's use that to shape the kind of support, guidance, and policies that will make people better digital citizens. Simply saying, here's some more rights for you, live it up, I think is going to be risky. And frankly, if it doesn't roll out over time well and safely, I'm afraid we'll find that your hopes, and I think I share many of them, are going to be disappointed. If it's not seen to work well, then we'll be taking one step back instead of one step forward.
All right. And one more question before I open up for Dr. Thomason to share her experience and insights. But so there are experts, and we recently had several discussions at the international level where there is an opinion that maybe having different layers for different industries, such as, like we talked before, a digital identity and backup with physical identity for legal purposes should be different than for healthcare or for financial purposes or for real estate purposes. And maybe even have digital twins for each of these in addition to a digital identity, so that you can do certain operations in a safer environment. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's avatar science, if you will.
Yes.
Right? How many instantiations of my intentions can there be? It's an exciting and challenging debate. One answer is there should be no limit. The problem and challenges with that are that, well, it turns out that we've allowed there to evolve a world in which healthcare and finance are very closely related. If I lived in a country where I would have good healthcare independently of my ability to pay for it, which alas is not that of my country, which would be the United States, then I'd be a lot more cheerful about the idea of merging some or allowing 1,000 digital identities to bloom. So that's one point. The other is I want to make sure that the differing identities for different purposes are not used to shirk responsibility. I think no matter my identity, every one of those avatars has responsibility for which I am ultimately the accountable agent. And so working as we are, as you know, and many of our colleagues are working on, what counts as digital accountability and responsibility when you've got a good security protocol in place. With the kind of security that, for example, blockchain provides, you can use that either to do interesting, important new deals that protect populations, or to insulate someone from responsibility or accountability. And those challenges, I think, are both really interesting and really difficult to get right.
Thank you. Dr. Thomason, what about your opinion on this topic?
Yes, well, I think the conversation that we're having is a conversation of great privilege. And my views are shaped very much by the 3 years I spent in WHO when I was the global focal point for civil registration and vital statistics. And there's 1.5 billion people in the world who have no identity whatsoever, and so have no way to access any of their rights or entitlements or the financial system, in many cases to be married or to have their children in school. And for me, it's thinking about simply, can digital means help enable those people to prove that they exist and that they have any rights and entitlements? And I think that's a much kind of simpler thought than the one that we're talking about, where we have many rights and entitlements and many opportunities to access these through a much more complex network. So my thinking around, first of all, using digital to be able to create some sort of identity for people, which can be confirmed through things like testimonials. People talk about a web of trust, so that if they then they become a refugee and they have to run to some other place, that they have some way of connecting themselves back to something they might have owned or something that they might have done. And I think that this is a really important problem that we need to solve, because people without identity are much more open to human trafficking, for example, and exploitation in terms of labour. On the self-sovereignty side of it, of course, it does come back to that same conversation that we had before around digital literacy and also understanding what it is that they've got this self-sovereign control over. And Ingrid, I think you made a really important point. Unless people make things a lot simpler around public keys and private keys and how you actually can look after this, there's a great many people in the world, including me, who really are not fit to have that.
I got it. Well, and definitely, like you already alluded to, there are several reports by the World Bank, World Health Organization, OECD, International Monetary Fund, who all absolutely feel that digital identity is the pathway towards financial inclusion, because they have clear proof that there are a lot of people not only without identity, but that means, yes, no access to food, no access to shelter, no access to financial means or mobile payments of any kind. But I do worry, although I'm an advocate from a technology perspective, that I know people will sign their life away to get access to that. So I think when we talk about truly informed consent, which is our topic today, who will worry about something that someone will do with their data in the future when they need food now, or when someone tells them, look, if you sign here, you'll get a bank account, or if you sign here, your kid can go to school. So I worry about those things, but I think there are some maybe collaborative efforts we can all do as a society at very high level to have some of these safeguards. And Dr. Goodman, last series we had cybersecurity as a topic, so that's where we also address some of the safeguards we can do to mitigate the risks if we're going to put everybody in this digital space and share digital identities, to at least make sure we do it right. So I think that's our goal, but definitely there are always going to be challenges and barriers to overcome. So I also wanted to bring up a topic that's one that's very difficult to address by most of them before we go to the pandemic, but it's related a little bit, which is genomics and precision medicine, and what are some of the issues with informed consent, because it has come up a lot given the advances in technology and given some of the latest social media news about the vaccine development, right? Precision medicine is having a very high profile, so to speak. So can you maybe both, first Dr. Goodman and then Dr. Thomason, share your thoughts about informed consent, about genetic material, and some of the unique ethical issues that we have to be careful about when we store that kind of data and get informed consent about genomic sequencing?
Especially if I may, in a digital world, we think of genomic information, we think of test tubes, but a lot of our information is actually stored and going to be shared, transmitted, and analyzed digitally. And so these two worlds come together in very interesting and challenging ways. Let me underscore Jane's point earlier, though, that a lot of these technologies and a lot of the benefits of the technology are traditionally, and to our collective shame, been available only to a small number of people who had enjoyed the resources. I think that many people around the world would say, you know, genetics, genomics, I'd actually like some clean water, thank you very much, and a good sanitary system. And if we really want to save as many lives as possible and make as many lives as rich and full as possible, then those decisions need to be driven not by the usual kinds of engines, but by different and new engines, the ones that take into account, well, the vulnerable populations we've been talking about, the populations whose assent and consent we need to be effective in a public health realm. And three, the idea of ongoing support for them, kind of digital guides and mentors and ombuds people, if you will. I think that the science of precision medicine is exciting, and I think we all have an obligation to follow through on it. But I think we need, as we follow through, for the sake of everything from cancer to public health emergencies, including COVID, ought to be able to make sure that we enjoy the benefits of exciting new technology, but we do a far better job than is our wont and our history in sharing it. This should not be a benefit that only accrues to those who made a good investment. This has been a problem with biomedical research for a long time, is that the people who we rely on to be participants in the research to test the efficacy of a drug or an approach, at least in my benighted jurisdiction, end up finding out that when the drug or device is approved, their insurance doesn't cover it. As injustices go, that manages to add insult and irony to injury.
Correct. Dr. Thomas?
That actually made me think of two things that I want to share with you. One is this issue about the subjects of research. If you think about it and think about blockchain token economies, you could actually create a research ecosystem where the participants in the research are actually rewarded for their contribution. So that's my first just thought for the day. The second one I wanted to share with you, because I think this is the kind of ethical dilemma that we will be facing in regards to things like genomics. I was the judge at a hackathon series in 2018, and the winner of the overall series had a project where they were essentially treating the human genome, if you like, as an investment that people other than the owner of the genomic material could invest in and could share and make money out of. So if I give you the example, the final was held in Africa, and this was a topic of quite considerable interest, because if you map the genome and you say, okay, it's your genome, so you can own 20% of this asset, and I'm going to make it available for sale to research and scientific communities, so I'm going to own some of the assets.